I see that it is 4:30. I'm going to call the meeting of the Judiciary and Law Committee to order. This is October 25th, 2021. And this is a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors. Call of the roll. All of the members of the committee are here with the exception of Jim Zahns. And given his schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if he joins us momentarily. Also with us are a number of staff members who will introduce themselves when it's appropriate. First order of business, approval of the minutes of September 27th. You should have received that with your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Vandermillen, second by Bauer. Any questions, additions, comments, changes to the minutes of September 27th? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Whatever suits you today. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Excuse me one moment. Next order of business, public comment. Krista, do we have any members of the public with us today or any comment that was offered?
No public comment.
Thank you. Then staff reports, and we will start out with Josie LaLiberty. Give us a staff report on Child Support Agency. Josie, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Nothing to add, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Josie? Josie, I would like to ask you about bullet point number 2 that has to do with child support warrants. And I'm not familiar with that. And I was wondering if maybe you'd just give us a little bit of a rundown on what we're talking about. But you're muted right now. Can't, no sound. Heard you a minute ago.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good. Thank you.
Okie doke. I apologize for that. So when there's a child support warrant, it's a civil warrant for either failure to appear at a court hearing, or it's a warrant and commitment order, meaning there's a jail sentence that's been imposed against someone for not paying. Once they're in custody, the warrant comes out of the system. But there are times when, I don't know if Judge Mayer can mute. There we go. There are times when people might come into the office and make a payment and sign a stipulation here at our lobby to resolve the warrant. And then that document gets e-filed and it ends up in a queue on somebody's dashboard, and it takes time for the attorney to review it and sign it. And then it goes to the judiciary for them to review and sign it. And while all that behind the scenes stuff is taking place, that person is driving down I-94 and getting pulled over and arrested on a warrant that is sort of resolved already, just not out of the system. So we created a form to try to expedite that.
Future cases too, and they're all just a little bit different too. And they're
But we're just trying to be cognizant of that fact and be as responsive to our case participants as we possibly can, because we never want someone to be held if they don't need to be.
And I appreciate the explanation and the effort. I think this is one of those things that serves our citizens well. So I applaud you for that. Anybody else? Questions for Child Support Agency? I did have a question about the 108% paternity establishment rate, but your note explained that as well.
Yes, I thought that might throw somebody off, so I thought I'd include the explanation there.
Appreciate that as well. For a while, I thought maybe some of these people had 2 fathers or something. All right.
No. And I would say that former Director Jeannie Stevenson did get the Hall of Fame award at our conference last week. And when they, she was unable to attend, but when they made the announcement to the room, they actually read from the letter that Supervisor Tripp and Supervisor Story had given to me to support the nomination. So thank you for sending that to me.
Oh, I'm glad we could help. I'm extremely proud that she was nominated and named a member of the Hall of Fame. Anything else from child support? All right. Next up, Melissa, Emergency Management and 911. Again, Melissa's report is in the packet. And we do have an issue that has arisen. And I would like Melissa to kind of run through the situation regarding the hazmat contract with Menomonie Fire. Melissa, are you ready to do that?
Sure. Thank you very much. So we have a contract with Menomonie Fire to be our designated hazmat team for Dunn County, and the contract has been in effect since the early 90s. It's been modified a couple times here and there, but basically it says that they will respond to all of our hazmat calls within Dunn County. And currently what we basically have in the contract is for them responding to our calls is we will apply for a grant on their behalf and be able to purchase equipment through Dunn County through a grant that's only offered through the Emergency Management Office. So that's kind of the short story of the current contract that we have. Recently, we received some information or a request from the city of Menomonie to revisit that contract, change a bunch of the language to be probably more accurate for today's responses and things like that. But in addition to that, they would like to add an annual fee. And currently they have picked $10,000 as their annual fee, plus us purchasing the items from that hazmat grant. So this was given to us maybe about a month ago. Paul and I did meet with a couple representatives from the city of Menomonie, and Paul suggested that I put it in my staff report and bring it to this committee. So that's kind of the short story. You're muted, Jim.
Thank you.
Yep.
The current contract calls for an annual payment from Dunn County to Menomonie Fire of $5,000. Is that correct?
It does, but we do it in the form of equipment. So we give them equipment in equivalent to.
And that equipment is purchased through a grant that the county is eligible for, but the city is not. Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
And again, if I understand this correctly, what the city would like in a new agreement is for us to continue applying for that grant, provide that. I think it's actual $5,300. Is that correct? The equipment grant?
I think that was the average of what we have given them over the past 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it can vary. I think we can go up to, close to $10,000 depending on what type of equipment they choose. And Menomonie Fire always chooses the equipment. Mhm.
Now, one of the issues I'm sure with Menomonie Fire is that grant is for equipment and they are not free to use that allocation in whatever way they choose. Is that part of the issue?
I think what we had basically talked about was that the ability to maintain a team is much more expensive than it was in the early 90s. Equipment, and I'm not sure exactly what all it takes to have a team like that. I would think most of it would be equipment, but that was kind of the statement, is that, equipment is much more expensive than it was in the early 90s. And so therefore they would like some cash payment along with the equipment that we buy them to kind of offset that.
And one last question, because I
Yep.
need to be clear. What they would what they are proposing is that we continue to apply for the grant, provide the equipment that's made available,
Mhm.
plus a $10,000 a year annual payment. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
All right. So I've got a few questions, and anybody on the committee can chime in here because we're going to have to, at some point, not tonight, but at some point, take some action on how we want to deal with this. We don't have $10,000, first of all. So where did they come up with the $10,000 figure? Do we have any kind of accounting or books that we could look at that tell us that, yes, this is a legitimate amount of money? Because I have a couple of priorities here. One of them is that we maintain hazmat services as necessary. One of them is that we deal fairly with the city of Menomonie. We've had a good relationship, and I would hate to see that damaged in any way. But thirdly, I'd also like to make sure that if we scratch around and can find $5,000 or $10,000, it's going to have to come from something else. So I want to be sure that that's an appropriate amount of money to spend. So
Sure.
do we have any financial documents or a statement or a budget or anything that we can look at that would give us that information?
Basically, to answer your first question is where did they come up with the $10,000 figure is, I believe Chief Class contacted some other fire departments in the area. And this was within kind of the spectrum of fees that other hazmat teams have been asking for with some of their contracted counties. One of the examples was Eau Claire, a neighboring county. Their level team is a level A team and ours is a B, but Eau Claire pays Eau Claire Fire $20,000. Now I know they're bigger than us and you know, it's a little bit different, but that's one. Another one was Rice Lake Fire. Barron County does pay them $10,000. And then another one was Marathon County that he used. And I do not remember the exact amount on that, but it was a little bit higher. So, yeah, so that's kind of where he based his, you know, is that's kind of what it takes to run those teams. Feeling Menomonie was similar. He felt like that is what it would take to run our team.
Questions
As far as their financials, exactly what they spend the money on. No, I do not have that. They did send us a letter, and the only financials on that letter was basically since 2011, there have the cost of running that program as $232,297, of which the city has paid 79% of that total. I don't know exactly what it was on. I don't know what they spent that money on, if it was on physicals for their employees, if it was on equipment, but I sure could ask that information and get that specific, you know, what is the cost, what was costing $232,000.
Now the 232,000 was a total for a 10-year period?
That is correct.
Okay. So we're
Yep.
looking at
Yep.
20,000 a year roughly.
Yep. So we would basically have, you know, we would contribute half and they would contribute half. Or they're, you know, give or take a little tiny bit.
Chairman Zuck. Now, you said they wanted an additional 10,000, but still want us to give them the $5,000 in equipment grants. Is that correct?
That is
So they're
correct.
raising it. So we'll be paying 15 of the 20,000.
I'm sorry, what was that, Mike? Your last statement, I missed it.
So we would, in essence, be paying 15 out of that $20,000.
Somewhat. The $5,000 that we do give them in equipment, we then in turn apply for a grant through the state, so we get reimbursed that money. of course, it takes time and effort out of our department to apply and, work the financials on a grant, but yes.
And it's
Mike,
$5,000 they don't spend out of their own budget.
Correct.
Mike, I think the roughly 200,000 over the last 10 years is, Melissa, help me if I'm mistaken here, but I think it's money out of pocket that the city spent on the hazmat program beyond the price of the equipment that was provided through the grants.
No, I think that's the total cost. I think
it
what
is?
the city, yeah, what the city has spent is 184,000
Okay,
of that 232. So,
all right. Other questions? Chairman Bartlett. Go ahead.
Melissa, do you know the history of why we bought the truck and trailer that they used for that up till last year?
Yeah.
And then when we sold it, I know Dunn County owned that truck and trailer. When we sold it, didn't we give them the money we got for it? And that was around 17,000, if I remember right?
It was. I don't know the exact history, Dave, other than the LEPC committee, which we talked about a while ago, kind of was instrumental in working with Menomonie Fire and getting this hazmat team kind of up and running back in the 90s. So I think there was a lot of commitment back then to get it up and running and get it going. And so I think that was part of the process as I'm assuming we applied for grants back in the 90s. I don't know. I was not involved in emergency management at that time, but I believe there were, some situations where we were able to give them some funding to help start the process.
And that was my memory of it, that we did purchase that to help get that.
We did.
program started.
And then I actually brought it to this committee earlier this year, just a couple, 3-4 months ago, about the sale of that truck and trailer that you just mentioned. Menomonie Fire had contacted me and said, basically it was end of life, and to find parts and equipment to replace, fix, keep that vehicle in operation status was hard to find. And so they wanted to sell it, and they had found a new trailer that was around $8,000. And they thought that if we could sell both the truck and trailer, that if we put that money towards their trailer, they were going to kind of take over the ownership of all the vehicles, which is a win-win for both of us. That means, they have it, it's their equipment, they can maintain it and all of that. And I think we all agreed that that was a good thing. It was, absolutely great that we got way more than we expected for that truck and trailer. We were kind of expecting, around 5,000-6,000 maybe, and we did get 17,000, and we did give them the whole 17,000.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep.
I hate to muddy the waters too much here, but unfortunately it's kind of a mud puddle anyway. So can you talk a little bit about, I understand there are some counties that do not contract for hazmat services.
There are.
The state has an interest in hazmat or addressing hazmat spills and things as well. Can you kind of outline what that process is?
Sure. So in our region here, I believe there's only a handful of counties that actually do have contracts with a local fire department to be their hazmat response team. St. Croix, Pierce do not, Chippewa does not. So there are, some of the bigger counties in our region do not have contracts with local fire departments. And they do rely on the state hazmat team to respond if they would have a call. Now there is a difference in a train derailment that has, 7 cars that have hazardous material in them, or a tanker overflows his diesel at the gas station, by 100 gallons. So I think that like Pierce, like you said, Pierce, St. Croix, and Chippewa, those people are just going to rely on the state hazmat team for those larger responses, and those smaller ones, the local fire departments are handling.
Chairman Bartlett, go ahead.
Well, a follow up to that, you know, who would handle the large one in Chippewa County? Does the state have their own teams, or do they call out, do they call out Eau Claire to do it? Or how does that work?
Yep. The state has teams throughout Wisconsin, and Menomonie Fire actually is a level B hazmat response team for the state. And Eau Claire is a level A response team. So if there were, if there happened to be a large event, and we had to call in the state response, they would send us one of those if we needed. And I'm assuming that's what Chippewa and St. Croix and Pierce and those kind of counties do too.
Melissa, since we have chosen to have a contract with the local fire department, there must be some advantage to that we're willing to pay for.
I think there is an advantage. As you mentioned it earlier, Jim, the relationship with the city. I think it's great. I think it's great when we have a hazmat spill. They handle it. We have good communication back and forth. Maybe need to tweak some of our policies, as it's been a while, but I think there is an advantage to know that if we do have something, Menomonie Fire is right here and they are going to respond, and we work well together. Now, I don't know what that is worth to us. Like I said, I don't know if we had the big spill, if we had the railroad incident, and we didn't have a contract. If we call the state, they'd probably send Menomonie anyway, or send Eau Claire. I guess I can't 100% say that, but that would be the thought process. They would send us a level B or a level A team, depending on. But like I said, there is some satisfaction in knowing that it is our local team. We do have a good relationship working with them in the past, and that they do go out and handle it. We do have good communications. I do understand that, the funding for the year 2022 is tough. Our budget is written. Our budget is almost completely passed by the full county board. So this is really a hard time to be talking about something like this. And I don't know if we want to be a 50-50 in a 50-50 relationship with the city or not. Like I said, they can or do respond to other counties. And so what that looks like as a relationship, or where they fit into that 100% pie, chart and things like that, I guess that's what we should discuss.
If my understanding is correct, the person who causes the hazmat spill, let's say it's diesel fuel or whatever, are responsible for the cost of cleanup. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So on an individual incident, those costs would be borne by the person responsible. So the cost of the hazmat team really is the maintenance of that team, making sure they have the appropriate equipment, that kind of training.
Yep.
I understand that there are some physical exams that are involved and necessary. All right.
Yep.
Let me suggest something, and I'd like to hear from the committee and Chairman Bartlett on this. I wonder if it would be appropriate if, after some further consideration, Melissa, you came to us with a proposal that we could recommend to the county board regarding, A, our continued contract with the City of Menomonie Fire Department, and B, the level of financial support. If we had that, then we could talk about whether we want to continue that relationship. If so, how much do we think it's worth to us? And we'd have something concrete as an action item we could either approve and forward to the county board or reject. Is that an appropriate way to go about this? And Chairman Bartlett, I might ask you that question as well.
No, that sounds like a good way to handle it. I have one more question for Melissa. The grant that we apply for, if we didn't name, have Menomonie as our Hazmat team, we probably wouldn't be able to apply for that grant. Is that correct?
I believe
So
that
the
is
state
correct.
would keep that money.
Right.
Because we would be, okay.
Yeah,
That's what I
if you
thought.
don't list a specific team, then we're not really eligible to apply for that grant.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and Supervisor Rogers, I'm going to get to you, and I think I know the answer to my question. Has there been any consideration of Dunn County having its own hazmat team?
I
You
don't
look
think,
pretty excited about that, Melissa.
no, I don't think there has been any consideration, and I don't even know how we would do that.
Okay,
Generally it's a local fire department.
okay. Yeah, and that's why I was pretty sure that would be your answer, but it's logical to have a fire department or some similar agency already in place that simply
Correct.
takes.
Yep.
Supervisor Rogers, you had your hand up.
I feel a little bit like we're being shaken down by the city when we can receive the same services for free. We are contributing with that grant money. So I question why they're asking for so much from us. So I'm a little put off by that, but I guess I'll wait to see what you come back with.
Sure. Well, like I mentioned, the initial comments from the city, and I suppose it's true, I don't have the specific dollar amounts, but things cost more than they did in 93. I'm sure requirements that they're required to have for items of equipment, training, et cetera, like that have changed and improved since 1993. So I think that was their thought process. But I think it's fair, as Jim mentioned a while ago, that we know what they spent those, that 232,000 on. What is it? Is it on training? Is it on equipment? Is it on, physicals, or, what is the cost? Where does that come from? So I think that's a fair question, and I can definitely do some follow-up with Menomonie Fire on that. And work on gathering that information for you for next month.
Can I follow up, Jim?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So I would have a question on the fire department is getting paid by either the state or whoever they're going out to clean up a spill from. So they're receiving income for whatever they do as well. So I do have a lot of questions as we're bringing this forward. Maybe you can clear some of them up too.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will definitely try. I'll ask those questions. I think it's a lot like when the highway shop bills, I think they bill for the truck and the person and the foam that was possibly used, or the material that was used to either contain or, disperse the hazmat spill. So yeah, they are being reimbursed for that. Those are good questions that I can definitely ask. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate that. Supervisor Bauer had his hand up, and then Supervisor Vandermill.
Yeah, I was kind of listening to you about those grant. Are we guaranteed that grant? I mean, what happens if it doesn't come about?
Well, there are no guarantees. I suppose the state could decide to no longer do that grant. I guess they've been doing it as long as I can remember. It's kind of tied to us having to list, a hazmat team. So I think that's kind of how they have used that grant in the past is for everybody so that we can maintain hazmat teams throughout the state. So, and I think Mike said it and I didn't respond and I'm sorry, but I think you asked if they were receiving funding from other agencies. And I do believe that they do receive some funding from the state. And then I think they do have a contract with another county. I think they have a contract with Pepin County.
Supervisor Vandermill.
Besides endorsing Mike's questions and comments, I'd add that I wonder if maybe they should be turning to the state for an increase if their expenses aren't being met.
Yeah, I really don't know the funding process that they go directly to the state with. I'm sure it's based on the level of their team, AB, things like that, the size of their team, and different things like that. So I can ask some questions on that too.
Chairman Bartlett.
Well, my thoughts are that this is kind of a bad time of the year to bring this up to us. They know the budget process as well as we do. And given the fact that if we did decide to just notify the state that they would lose potentially $5,000 thereabouts in equipment grant, and due to the fact that they were hoping to get $8,000 for a trailer and they actually received 17 this last year, that maybe they could put this ask off till next year and would give us some ample time to answer all the questions that I think need to be answered. Because I also agree that if they have a expense of $200 and some thousand a year and they want us to pay or that's the expense over 10 years.
So basically 20,000.
The average is 23,000 a year, and they want us to pay 15, and they've got a contract with Pepin. I don't fault them for trying to bring in extra revenue, but I would like to have plenty of time to discuss it. And so I think that would be another option. I'm just throwing that thought out there that maybe we could put this off for 1 year, talking with them. Maybe you could discuss it with them and
Sure.
see with what's happened this last year, maybe they could go another year, because potentially we could decide to not go with them and they would lose that $5,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Those definitely are great talking points that we can go over, over those things with Menomonie Fire and the city of Menomonie and talk about. And I think you're absolutely right, Chairman Bartlett, that the timing is just off. We did actually have that payment to them earlier on the sale of the items. And like you said, maybe that could just buy us some time to move this conversation into 2022 for a new contract for 23. So, definitely I will, schedule a meeting where we can discuss these things and I can gather some of the information that you guys asked for and get that back to you.
Thank you to both of you. And following up on Chairman Bartlett's comment, my intention, thinking through this, was that if we were to pass a resolution recommending a continuation of the contract, and that included some sort of a monetary contribution, that would begin with the 2023 budget. That gives us plenty of time. We wouldn't have to look at some kind of a budget adjustment. I think Menomonie Fire has got to be fairly happy with the fact that they got a little bit of a bonus for the sale of the truck. But again, I don't think we're in any big rush to do this. But when we can get those numbers, when we get some more facts and figures, I think then we've got something solid to talk about. Whether we want to continue the agreement with them or not, and if so, for how much. And I think if we start in 2023, then we work it into next year's budget. That's all. Any other questions or comments at this time? This will come up again, depending on what Melissa is able to find out, and we can talk about an action item at some time in the future. I got bells ringing here. I couldn't figure out whether it was on screen or my doorbell. Okay. All right. Anything else for Melissa regarding emergency management 911? Thank you, folks. Good discussion.
Yes, thank you very much.
Medical examiner, Marcy. Do I see
Good
Marcy
evening.
somewhere?
Yep. Hello, good evening.
I was looking in the wrong box. Anything to add to your report, Marcy?
Just that we've added one more autopsy to Dunn and two more to Eau Claire County since I wrote this report a week ago.
Does anybody have any questions? I do have one comment, and that is, if you look through Marcy's report, you realize that there's going to be, almost without doubt, a significant shortage in the budget. I called Keith Stry, and he was of the opinion, I am of the opinion, that it might be an appropriate thing to ask for a contingency fund request to cover the shortfall. If that happens, that should probably, well, I think it has to happen before the end of the year. And again, Chairman Bartlett, you can straighten me out on this. That contingency requests are limited to emergencies or opportunities. I think that the budget that Marcy presented was realistic and legitimate. And the fact that we're over budget significantly is unpredictable and simply has to be addressed. So I'm guessing, Marcy, that might be an appropriate way to proceed. And Keith said, by all means, give him a call and he'd be happy to talk to you about it.
I reached out to Keith late last week and was unable to make contact. I wanted to make sure that Keith and Paul, and then also Norb and Catherine in Eau Claire counties were aware of this. I do have communication with them on a regular basis of where the office stands with these. And like you mentioned, we don't have control over this. Autopsies, our office does our due diligence in investigating these and seeing if an autopsy is necessary. In the past, Supervisor Story used to like the numbers every month. She thought that was helpful. I don't provide all of the numbers and breakdowns every month, only at the year end, if it's necessary at any point to see the justification of these authorizations. I'm happy to do so. It serves the community and their family, law enforcement agencies, and district attorney's offices in most of our autopsy authorizations. And it is very unpredictable, but I feel like this is a trend that's moving, that each year we're just going to see an increase. It's incredible the amount of increase in homicides and suicides and drug overdoses and suicides that need to be determined suicides by a board certified pathologist versus just a toxicology report or the obvious nature at the scene.
Any questions for Marcy? Again, I encourage you to reach out to Keith, take a look at what might be done to address the shortfall. Anything else for medical examiner? Thank you, Marcy. Sheriff, you're next. Anything to add to your report?
Just a couple things. Dennis Reed, longtime patrol deputy, is retiring. He's going out on a partial duty disability. November 5th will be his last day. So this has kind of been that position that I've had in my report the last couple months. It's been in limbo, and Logan Bauer will be offered that position. We started him training with him last week as a special deputy, a potential LTE to fill in that Dennis Reed's position. Well, he's been off on work restrictions. So we'll be moving along with that position to get that filled. Things are looking a little better for our jail staffing. We had a new jail officer start today, William Owen, bright young kid from Glenwood City that we interviewed actually last Wednesday. His background and psych test and physical and everything had already been done because we were looking at hiring him on the reserves. So it was a quick and easy move to get him in as a corrections officer into the jail. So he actually started today. So, and we've got a couple other good applicants that we've got backgrounds going on here. So hopefully our vacancies will start to fill up here. We do have, I think I probably put it in my report, Sergeant Owens, that's been here since '95, will be retiring January 3rd. So the vacancies keep coming in the jail facility. So other than that, I think that's all I need or have to add.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any questions? Chairman Bartlett.
I have a couple. Are you going to participate in that buckle up and put the phone down campaign from the state?
Yep, I think we're slated to participate in that. We don't see any money from the state on. It's basically we report our numbers to the state and kind of get recognition from the agency or for the agency, and usually go into a drawing for equipment grants basically across the state if we do participate. So we try and participate in all of those safety campaigns each year.
Yeah, it sounded like there'd be some at least potential of some advertising for the sheriff's department or something, that good communication to the public.
Yeah.
My other question is I assume you might have probably have seen the salary, that compensation report that just came out, or I just saw it. I assume that the departments, I know that in the past you've had problems with jailers or correction people. Looking at that, is that going to solve your, think it'll help solve the problems, or did it not go far enough?
It's always a $1 million question, I guess, whether it'll be enough. We just interviewed a gentleman we didn't actually get a chance to even interview him. He found out last Wednesday what our starting salary was in the jail, and he withdrew before he even came to the interview. So we're hoping this gets us closer to be able to hire some of those people. This gentleman actually worked for the Wisconsin prison system through DOC, and he just couldn't afford to take the pay cut to come to work here, even though he lives local. He's driving into Richmond instead, and he could come here to work. But there was no way he could take the pay cut to come here to work. So we're certainly hoping it gets us where, that's much more attractive to people. But it'll certainly help. Whether it it's high enough. I'm not sure.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah. It's, I mean, step in the right direction, increase the top pay for the corrections officer. Granted, it takes you 11 years to get there, but it increased the top pay at about $3.75, $3.80 an hour. So certainly a step in the right direction.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Seeing none. Thank you, Kevin. Brings us to the courts. Katie, anything to add to your report?
I guess the only thing I would add is I've seen the new class comp study, and I've had a few staff members not happy where their positioning is on the grid. So we'll probably be doing some appeals or coming forward if when the county has some protocol in play on that. Otherwise, nothing else to add to my report.
Thank you. Dave, refresh my memory. It seems like the last couple of times we've done these comp and class studies, there have been some minor adjustments based on what people, the feedback that we've received. Is that correct? It seems like I
Yes.
recall it.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. There's a process to appeal, just like there was 10 years ago or 7 years ago, whenever we did it the last time.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there's a process for it. We're going to be looking at it at admin, and I just thought I knew the correction officers had a problem, so that's why I asked that question. Wondering, I'm hoping that's going to solve the problems. If it doesn't, then we have to do it again. I'd rather do it one time and try to do the right thing.
Yeah, no, in my situation, it was like the office manager was reduced in classification below employees that they supervise. So I'm not quite sure how that got overlooked. So that's one thing I definitely want to make a change in. And I know they did revert the judicial assistants back in pay to what they used to be at. That was just corrected the last time this came about. So I think we'll be working on those positions for sure.
I certainly wouldn't promise anything, but I know that there's a review process, or at least there was in past times. So anybody else have questions for Katie regarding court system?
Yeah, I have one.
Supervisor Vandermill. Sorry, I missed you, Carl.
You mentioned that you're changing the ways you're communicating with the current jury panel. I'm just curious what changes you're making.
Yeah, so I'm hoping what we're going to do starting in January of 2022 is if you've ever received jury information from us or served as a juror, we would always mail you a packet of paperwork. And we always ask that you return a summons back to our office within like 5 to 10 days of receiving that. And I learned recently that we're the only county in the state of Wisconsin that require jurors to return that paperwork. It's a lot of paperwork. It leads to a lot of confusion, postage, extra envelopes. So instead of us requiring that you return that back to us, when we serve you with the paperwork, that will be all of the paperwork that you receive. And we're going to incorporate an electronic form that the juror can request, say they need a day off, or they have a doctor's note that they can attach, and just make it a little bit more of electronic communication. And it will be checked at a faster rate of pace than what it currently is. I know that I've heard some complaints that our recordings are not up to date. And we need to get up with the times here. We don't want to make people's lives more miserable serving on jury duty service than what it needs to be. I feel like we're working harder than working smarter. So I'm hoping to change that in 2022.
Good, thank you. My son was up for jury duty a few months ago. He was complaining about some things. I don't remember which, but I was just curious to know so I could tell him what you've done and see if he'd like it better.
Yeah, thank you. I'm open to feedback and suggestions.
Anything else for Katie? Seeing none. Thank you, Katie. CJCC, I see Sarah's with us. Anything to add to your report, Sarah?
I think I'll just echo some of the statements on the wage comp and class study. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, as Sheriff alluded to, but there are some discrepancies with criminal justice positions across agencies. And I have expressed those concerns to HR and to Paul, and was reassured there'd be some sort of appeal process. But I think, it seemed like a good report, but certain things don't seem to ring true. So we'll see how that pans out, but that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Any questions for Sarah regarding CJCC? Don't see any. Thank you, Sarah. Last but not least, Andrea, do you have anything to add to your report from the DA's office?
No, I don't.
Questions for Andrea? I have one, and that's on your second bullet point. The Child Abduction Response Team. You went to a training. Can you tell us something about that? Do we have a child abduction response team?
We do. Yeah, and so all of the law enforcement agencies are involved, and it was a good tabletop exercise. And emergency management was involved as well. So a number of our agencies came together, but I thought it was beneficial to sit down and put all of us in the same room and go through a scenario together.
Can you tell us, has that CART been activated within the past 12, 24, 48 months?
Not fully, and Melissa can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding there was a missing, there was a missing child from another county, and then that child was located in Menomonie. And so I think the Amber Alert went out, and then the law enforcement was able to, find the child, and it was a quick result, but I think we had started to activate, but I was not involved. My victim witness coordinator was.
Can I assume that this is a statewide effort to kind of coordinate responses, so that obviously if a child is abducted, the chances are that there might be multiple counties involved? Am I right that this is an effort to kind of coordinate the response to that?
Right. There's a ton of agencies that are involved and a ton of protocols. And I think Dunn County's really, really prepared. And we've got, I think there's always more that we can do to be better. But I think having that, going through that scenario, all the real life scenario, and it was a good result, and it was quick. But yeah, there's a number of agencies that come into play.
Great. Learn something new every day here in this job. Thank you, Andrea. Anybody else have any questions for the district attorney's office? If not, thanks to all of you for not only your reports, but your response to the questions. Item 6 on the agenda, nothing at the request of the chair. We have nothing for item number 7. Going down to item number 8, we do have a budget adjustment from emergency management that we need to forward to the executive committee with or without a recommendation. I would entertain a motion to recommend this budget adjustment to the executive committee. Supervisor Vandermiller moves. Do I have a second? Supervisor Bauer seconds. Melissa, you want to say a little bit about this?
Sure. We had an opportunity to apply for a grant through a company that works with the pipeline, the gas pipelines that run through Dunn County. And because we do have one that runs through kind of the northern half of Dunn County, we thought that it would be appropriate for us to apply. It's a $5,000 grant. And they like kind of coordinating efforts. And so when we wrote the grant, we wrote it to improve our communications within the mobile command unit, which could be used by any police, fire, or EMS in Dunn County. So we wrote the grant to replace 2 radios in that unit. And they did approve us purchasing one. And we've started the process of, going ahead and working on the equipment and getting that ordered. But yeah, it was a nice grant that popped up, and we thought we'd take advantage of it. And some of the radio equipment in the mobile command unit is definitely still functional. However, it's towards the end of life, and it's just time to replace them. So if it comes up again, we're definitely going to, try and apply again.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions regarding Supervisor Rogers? Go ahead.
So I don't completely understand. They're relocating labor expenses and that'll be covered by the grant. How's that work?
No, they're going to replace radio equipment that we have inside the mobile command unit.
But the report says attendance hours are relocated funds.
I think
I
what
can
Mike's
speak
asking
up.
about is the
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess-
reallocation of funds in the attendance hours. Sarah, I see you nodding your head. Can you enlighten us here?
Yeah, Melissa, if I can speak for you, help you
Sure.
along with that. You must have extra funds from a staff member, maybe a position wasn't filled, and they're going to take some of those funds and put toward the expense of the machinery and equipment to
Yeah.
help pay for that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a matching
Yeah.
amount. then?
A
Okay.
transfer of expenses into
Yeah.
a different account. Yeah.
Okay.
Because like I said, we applied to have 2 replaced, and they would only pay for the 1. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question, Mike. I'm sorry about that. Thanks, Sarah, for the help on that. Yeah, so like I said, there's a couple pieces of equipment that can be improved, and we're going to replace those.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Discussion on the motion. We have a motion to recommend the budget adjustment to the executive committee, who needs to forward it then to the county board. All those in favor of the motion to recommend, say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Brings us to the conclusion of our agenda under announcements. By the way, for those of you keeping track, Supervisor Zahns did not show up today. I don't know what happened to him. But announcements, anybody have any announcements that are pertinent to the efficient operation of this committee or the county? Anything just foolish that you want to tell us about? No, nothing? Okay. Next meeting is scheduled for November 22nd, 4:30 p.m. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Last chance. All right. Thank you, folks. Thanks, Krista, for setting up the meeting. Thanks to Katie and Sarah for facilitating. Thanks to all the staff members, and thanks to the committee members. This meeting is adjourned.
Talk to you in